So where do you find God? That's the question we're taking a look at today in this episode of Cat Shorts, as we keep taking a look at big ideas of the Christian faith and shrinking them down into bite-sized packages to talk through as we work our way through Martin Luther's small catechism. So today the question kind of is, where do you find God? We said last time that God's everywhere, right? God has made all of creation, so there's not a place you can go or an instant in time you can be that isn't already directly in the very presence of God. And yet, we Christians dare to say, if you want to see God at God's most holy, at God's most divine, at God's most God-ish, of all the places you could look, you find God where a respectable deity isn't supposed to be, bleeding and dying on a cross as an executed criminal under the power of an empire in the backwater of a small province on the far eastern edge of the Mediterranean Sea. That's a scandalous thing to say, right? I mean, after all, we talk a lot about all the moments in our lives where we feel like we've felt God's presence. And a lot of times when you hear people talk about where they see God or feel God, it's happy moments, it's glorious moments, it's sunrises or sunsets, it's seeing a butterfly or a rose blooming or some moment when a baby is born. These are happy moments, joyful moments, and maybe moments of great power like the might of a hurricane or the majesty of the Grand Canyon. These are places we expect maybe to see the signs of the divine because they're so much more powerful than us. And yet at the heart of the Christian faith, centered in what we call the second article of the Creed, is the idea that of all the places you can find God, God is most clearly and also surprisingly visible, dying on a cross, killed by the empire, executed for our sake. There you find what God is most really like. In the Creed, we get this sort of middle section after talking about how God the Father Almighty has created everything. The middle section, we sometimes call the second article, zeroes in on Jesus' life, the life of Jesus of Nazareth. And of all the things you could say about this Jesus, instead of mentioning his miracles or his inspiring teachings or the way he interacted with people, instead it sort of centers on he's really, really human and also really God, and also he died. All the places that you don't hear about are the things that would make it in anybody else's biography, their words and their actions, right? That's usually how we think about what makes a person great, how you really get to know a person, their words and their actions. And instead with Jesus, we get here's how he died. Here's God taking on death for us. If that sounds surprising, good, you're paying attention. Our older brother in the faith, Martin Luther, said that's sort of God's way of being in the world, always in the unexpected places, sort of showing us sort of God from a rear side view, seeing God in this sort of hidden but revealed kind of a way. That's how God shows up. So yeah, it's true to say you can feel a sense of God's presence when you're out in nature, or smelling a rose, or see a butterfly, or in a child's laugh. All those things are true. There's something especially powerful about the notion that the infinite and almighty creator of the universe, who we just said made everything, chooses to come close into the messiness of human life, with all the background noise of ordinary, regular life, the hustle and bustle, all the stuff that makes for regular, ordinary human life. God comes into in a human life like ours and then is willing to lay down that life for our sake, for yours and mine. That God's way of loving us, God's way of saving us, God's way of being God is less about decreeing things from on high and throwing down lightning bolts for us when we mess up like the old Greeks imagined Zeus to do, but instead who dies as one of us for our sake in the midst of us and by our own hands. That's a surprising thing to say about God. So of all the places, of all the ways and moments you can see or experience what God is like, the amazing and scandalous claim that Christians make is that we meet God, we see God most clearly exactly where a respectable God wouldn't show up, getting nailed to a cross in brokenness, in suffering, in death, and in self-giving love. It changes the way you see regular life then, doesn't it? It means that we don't only have to wait around till sunrises, sunsets, and babies laughing to find God, but that God chooses to show up in moments of utter brokenness and despair, and that God, by God's own being, chooses to redeem those moments by entering into them with us as one of us. whatever else it means to say we believe that Jesus is the Lord, it means that there in Jesus' life, God chose to enter humanity with us, for us, all the way to death, and that even at that point, God wasn't willing to give up on us. Join us next time for more conversation here on Cat Shorts.